Welcome to our monthly member presentation series. Today we have the pleasure of having our friend and neighbor, Don Dudick, as our speaker. Don's education includes a BS degree from Ohio University, an MBA from Adelphi University, and a doctorate in international business from Southeastern University. Don's career includes 28 years of marketing and management with Pfizer, IU International, and OxyChem. He also spent 4 years as a professor and Business Curriculum Review Committee, College of Business Administration, Colorado State University, plus many other committees in Summit County, Colorado, and Prescott, Arizona. Don is also a proud veteran, Vietnam veteran, serving as an officer during the war. Today, Don will draw upon his 26-year career in agribusiness and tell you why there is such a difference between chickens, which sell for $2.67 a pound, versus ground beef at $7.49 a pound. Why the difference between similar nutritions? Let's find out by welcoming Don Dudick.
Hi, folks. Thank you, Lee. It's a pleasure to be here and to share some of my life experiences with my neighbors here at Tide Point. Thank you very much. The title of my talk is, Does a City Boy Think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows? We talk about agribusiness, and I have to define agribusiness a little bit before we go very far. Agribusiness composes 26% of our gross national product. It's responsible for providing safe, reliable foodstuffs for all of us. Okay. I specialized in the portion of animal husbandry that has to do with animal health. So that's what we're going to take a little bit of a look at today, and how a city boy from Ohio ended up with sheep and cows and pigs and so forth. So we'll take you there. So the question I had first as a city boy from Ohio is, do brown cows really make chocolate milk? Well, perhaps we could use a different example. Over in Pennsylvania, there's a business called Hershey that makes candy bars. Now, I have to also explain, you guys familiar with artificial intelligence? I went on AI and I said, hey, I need a cartoon of a dairy cow eating Hershey cocoa. About 30 seconds later, this came up. I just was amazed with that came. On the right is an aerial of the Hershey factory there. So the question would be, well, does Hershey take their dairy cows and feed them cocoa, and then get chocolate milk and take it to the factory where they make Hershey milk chocolate? Anyways, we'll discuss my adventures in agribusiness and the animal health version. I'll give you a little bit about me, my business career. I'd like to give everyone here a little 25,000 picture of what's happening in today's animal protein markets. What's happening to the cost when we go to Kroger's or Publix or whatever, and we are shocked to see some of the pricing there. First of all, a little bit about me. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. Lee already told you where I did my education. I'm an Army ROTC Vietnam veteran. Are there any Marines in the room today? Well, they're all out there. Well, I was going to give them a big hoorah because this is their 50th anniversary today. I was married for 43 years. Unfortunately, my wife passed away at age 64. She had lung cancer. She was a non-smoker. Had 2 sons, 2 grands, and now 2 great-grandsons. This picture was taken in 2002. I have 3 careers, 28 years in agribusiness, 4 years as a university professor, and 12 years in consulting. Now, the sport of our family has been golf. And if you recognize this photo in the background, this is Harbortown Links. This was taken in 2012. And before I go on, I'd like to share with you a little story about a foursome at the country club. These 4 guys had a Saturday 8 o'clock tee time. Every Saturday they went and they played, and they were all pretty good golfers, all in they would shoot in the 6-7 handicap range, so they were pretty good. One of the fellows retires, and he moves to South Carolina to a place called Tide Point. They need a fourth. They're about to tee off as a threesome. The club pro comes up and says, "We have a new fellow who just moved in, and I think he has about a 7 handicap, and I think he'll fit right in with you. So why don't you let him play with you?" So they do. They play around. He fits right in. So they invite him to play again. They say, "By the way, we play at 8 o'clock. He says, "No problem. I'll be here at 8 o'clock. If I'm not here at 8 o'clock, I'll only be 10 minutes late." The next week they play. This fellow shows up. He plays left-handed, and he shoots a 65 or 75. This goes on for about a month. "I'll be there at 8 o'clock. If I'm not there by 8 o'clock, I'll be just 10 minutes late." He plays left-handed some days. He plays right-handed the others. He always scores 75, 76. So finally, the guys are sitting in the men's lounge. And one guy looks at the fellow's name was Albert. He says, "Albert, I got to know, how do you decide when you get up here whether you're going to play left-handed or you're going to play right-handed?" He said, "That's easy. When I wake up in the morning, I look at my wife. And if she's sleeping on her right side, I play right-handed. If she's sleeping on her left side, I play left-handed." Then one guy says, "Aha! What happens if she's sleeping on her back?" He said, "That's when I'm 10 minutes late." Okay, back to agribusiness. I spent 12 years with Pfizer in agricultural, in their animal health division. Anybody know a little bit aside of Pfizer and how they got in the Viagra business? Pfizer, as I understood it when I was working there, Pfizer was testing a heart drug over in a European country where the testing laws aren't quite what FDA has here. And they had a mixed group that were going out, and they were reviewing the folks in the test that came in. And the drug was not doing well as a heart medication. It was not doing well. But for some reason, as they were interviewing these, all the men were asking for extra samples of that drug. This was in the early 90s. This is supposedly true. So it turned out that being sharp marketeers, Pfizer figured out what they were asking those extra pills for. And that became the precursor for Viagra. In 1996, if you all remember, when Bob Dole lost the election to Clinton, almost immediately after, he started advertising on television for Pfizer for Viagra. And it was the first time that a drug that had to be prescribed by a physician was advertised to us. And it became the best-selling drug for the VA administration within a year. Why won't it go now? There we go. Oops. I'm sorry, I was hitting the wrong buttons. Okay, so it's December of 1965. I've just completed a 7-month tour in Vietnam. And the reason it was 7 months was that our unit, the 1st Cavalry Division, was stationed at Fort Benning, Georgia in July of 1965. And I want to tell you, in 1965, very few people knew where Vietnam was. And President Johnson ordered our unit to Vietnam. And the cutoff date, if you had to go with the unit, was January 1st. And my completion date for my active duty was in December. So I got to go. So anyways, it's back December of 1965. And I have a real advantage because all the young guys that are graduating from school, back then there was no lottery. You got drafted. If you got drafted. So I had an advantage. I did a lot of interviewing around. And my Uncle Frank gave me some advice. He said, you've got to go with a company that promises you culture, training, and most important, it's going to be the one time in your life when you can really negotiate pay. I was fortunate enough to do that a few times. Pfizer Animal Health clicked all the boxes for me. All the promotion at the culture, the promotions at Pfizer are internal. They promised, even though I was a silly, I had not seen a cow close up, and here's Pfizer Animal Health. They promised they'd train me, so I bought that. And they met the salary and incentives. So my first 12 years was with Pfizer. Okay. Oh. My wife goes to functions. You know how this happens. You know, my wife goes to functions. What does your husband do? So she gets to the point where she gets tired of trying to explain what I do. So she just tells folks, literally, he sells aspirin for chickens. A few years later, when I managed to earn a doctorate, my grandsons could not understand why my name is Poppy to my grandkids. Why does Dr. Poppy not treat people? They just couldn't understand it. And finally, we got through them a little bit, and one of my grandsons says, oh, you fix sick companies. And that kind of fit into, as my career progressed, that I got involved very much in that area. So, a little bit about Pfizer Animal Health. My first job was in the whole state of Michigan. I was assigned one rep to cover the whole state of Michigan. I'd like to share with you at this point the one success I am really proud of in the time, in the 4 years I spent in the field. And that was, we got a request. You're familiar with Michigan, you know where Battle Creek is, kind of in the center. The biggest employer in Battle Creek? Kellogg's. Kellogg's. You can smell Battle Creek before you get there, and it doesn't smell bad. It smells like Mom's kitchen as you're driving up with all where they're cooking the cereals. It turns out that in cooking cereals, there's a byproduct, and that byproduct has nutrients in it. It has energy. We received a request from Kellogg's that they wanted to talk to us. So I went and made a reservation or an appointment with a buyer and went to visit them. I never knew it. This is the 1960s, folks. Ladies are into mink coats, right? They really like mink coats. Kellogg's was feeding all this stuff. They had mink ranches. Now you make the combination between being cornflakes and mink ranches, but they were having a problem with bacterial diseases. So we put together a team, worked with Kellogg's. By the way, we went and visited a mink ranch, and the first thing the manager at the mink ranch says, never put your finger in that cage. So they are meat eaters. They like the stuff they get from Kellogg's, but they really like fingers. We put together a team of myself, a nutritionist, a veterinarian, and one of our engineers, and we managed to put together, through some experiments and so forth, an additive to put into the byproducts that Kellogg was generating that would eliminate these bacterial diseases that they had. And Kellogg's became my #2 account in that state, and I was just really, really proud of all the other things we did there. That was great. I was promoted out of the field to marketing. One of the reasons I picked and I wanted to go with Pfizer was that they said, we only promote from within. You have to start in sales. All we have is the animal health division. We'll train you. I did my duty in the field. I did learn a lot about agribusiness, about animal health. I took the Dale Carnegie course on making friends and influence people. I took the Dale course on being a salesman because Pfizer trained me really well on products, but not very good on how to sell people. So anyways, I rode with dairy veterinarians, stood in the barn while they did surgeries on cows, pig raisers, turkey ranchers, learned a whole lot about animal health during that time. I got myself promoted to New York City as product management. In my time there in New York, I also was promoted to marketing manager, and eventually, was promoted to management. Turns out that Pfizer corporate management did not want to be in the animal health business. We were tasked with putting together a company that would be attractive to investors. The first clue that we knew they didn't want us was they moved all of our operations out of New York City to Kansas City. So when the mothership sends you away, that ought to be a good clue that things are happening. Over a period of time, we were able to assemble a business plan where Pfizer could, through acquisitions, could put together a real dynamite type of animal health company that would appeal to the broad spectrum of animal husbandry. Why do I keep picking that one up? So here's a couple of the products that we sold. These are antibiotics that are given to, there's chickens, pigs, and that's an egg formula. You can go to the Tractor Supply Company in Bluffton, and you can go to their animal health aisle, and you can buy very potent antibiotics. You do not need a veterinarian's prescription to buy these things. You can buy very potent injectable antibiotics like penicillin and tetracyclines. Pfizer also offered a full line of products to veterinarians. However, veterinarians were not very happy with Pfizer because we were selling all these antibiotics to the Tractor Supply stores and the others. Also another market for us is feed mills. You've traveled around the country and you see in these little towns, you see the feed mill everywhere. Additives are put in the feeds. Strongit, as you see over here, is a warmer for horses. And you can order your horse feed and have this warmer put in, and in the process, the horse will warm itself. The story on this is, how do you know it's working? They say, well, it's very easy. The worms go to sleep, and when they wake up, the horse isn't there. So I was very fortunate. I had 4 promotions and I was the top sales manager at Pfizer Animal Health. Why on earth would I leave? Well, I covered a couple of the points. Corporate didn't want us. Now, listen, we raised our kids in Kansas City. Kansas City is a great town to live in, especially with what the Chiefs have done the last 12 years, right? I was involved in the building of the acquisition strategy, and I received an unsolicited offer from a company I had never heard of called IU International. It was a significant opportunity to work in acquisitions, divestitures, mergers, which really, really appealed to me. So I did. So I ended my 12 years. Basically, I divested myself of my first employer. But what happened with Pfizer, after I left, they did complete this big company I was telling you about. They changed the name to Zoetis. And this is a huge array of the products that they offer to the veterinary and animal husbandry. And the Zoetis right now, which is, by the way, listed on the New York Exchange as ZTS. This is just amazing. Everything that anybody in animal health or a veterinarian would need to treat an animal, Zoetis can provide. So it proved a very, very good strategy on Pfizer's part. Pfizer divested of it. They sold 83% of this company. It's listed on the exchange. So I take pride in what happened there. IU International was started off as a company called International Utilities. They moved to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and were staffed by not a bunch, but a staff of financial analysts and very go-go people, and got involved with acquisitions that you wouldn't believe. If it was for sale, they bought it. Really, this was the 70s when acquisitions and divestitures were so popular. So they contacted me and they said, basically, our agricultural operations division is a mess. Would you like to come and work on it and putting it together and working on acquisitions, divestitures, mergers, in all the agribusinesses, and I'm going to take you through these and give you some examples. Some of the businesses that they had acquired were sugarcane, molasses, whey protein. You folks know what whey protein is? If you're taking protein drinks, basically the protein probably is from whey, which is condensed from cheese manufacturing. Sources of vitamins and trace minerals and macadamia nuts and prawns. Now, prawns on the bottom, you know what prawn is? It's a shrimp that's about this big that restaurants love to have. Well, this one group had thought, well, what we'll do is we'll build ponds and we'll put 1,000 shrimp, 1,000 tiny prawns in there, and we'll feed them. And in X time, we'll have all these big prawns. What they didn't know was that prawns are cannibals. So in maybe 4 weeks, instead of the 1,001 ounce stock that you put in, you might have 4 250 ounce prawns. The solution on that one was really simple. We just liquidated the company. Macadamia nuts. You ever buy Mauna Loa and macadamia nuts? This company started Mauna Loa. One of the issues they had initially was that when they were harvesting the nuts, they couldn't get a whole nut. It always split in two. And it was just a real problem. And the solution was equally easy. You hired the right engineer to figure out how to make a machine that harvested it right. We spun the nut company off. Sugarcane was in Hawaii. The sugarcane company, they made a lot of sugarcane. They were huge landowners and operators in Hawaii. But when you study their books, you found that there were really two companies. They had huge real estate ventures in Honolulu, where they owned lots of property, lots of buildings. And so what we did is we split the company in two. We had the sugar and we had the investments, and we were able to sell them both to investors, and those got out of the molasses. The molasses company had big tanks in California, right where the Queen Mary is, Doctor. You folks ever been down around that area? Big, huge, like you see these gasoline tanks. They were shipping molasses in vessels, cargo vessels that would move molasses. You're familiar with molasses? It's a brown, sticky stuff. But they were at the prey of when those vessels were available. And consequently, a lot of the times that they were paying really premium costs to move the molasses. Also, one of the issues is as the sugarcane people are grinding up and pressing their sugarcane, they're making sugarcane and they're making molasses. And the molasses is going in this big tank over here. And when the tank gets full, they want you to get it out. And oftentimes you have to pay a premium to get the vessel in to get it out. The solution, buy your own vessel. We bought our own vessel, tanks, to haul molasses, which we could beat this when we took it to Long Beach and we discharged it to our tanks there. We took it over a little bit. We loaded it with what the Navy calls bunker's oil, which is the oil. Anybody in the Navy here? We don't have any Navy, any Marines. Anybody in the Army from here? Just me? Anyways, that's the oil that they use to run the non-nuclear plants in the vessels. So we had a backhaul. So we were making money taking it to Long Beach. We were making money bringing it back. We sold molasses to cargo. I got to share one thing with the whey protein people. This was a company in England. They come to the U.S. with a technology to take whey. Now, a lot of cheese is made in Wisconsin, right? A lot of dairy in Wisconsin. You start with milk, you process it a little bit, you have basically 90% of the milk that you process is this white little sloshy fluid called whey, and curds, which is then further processed into cheese. They had a process where they could condense the whey and derive the rest of the proteins and the protein that were in the whey out. Unfortunately, for some reason, they did all their research in Michigan. Now, I want to tell you that the dairy farmers in Michigan do not like the dairy farmers in Wisconsin. And the guys in Wisconsin who were supposed to be buying this would not listen to any recommendations that Michigan State University made. We solved those problems too. My task was to take these issues and make them profitable and sell them. Sold them to companies like you might recognize, Prince Corporation, Cargill, which is the largest, you know Cargill, huh? Privately held company in the U.S. in terms of revenue, bought the molasses operations. So, unfortunately, I had divested myself of my second employer because I sold everything I was responsible for. Either liquidated, merged, or divested the agricultural operations. By the way, IU International is no longer, they got acquired and chopped up and all that too in the crazy days of the 70s. I moved on to Occidental Chemical Corporation, which is a subsidiary of Occidental Petroleum. The unit I worked for was called Occidental Chemical Agricultural Products, Inc. We were mining 105,000 acres. Think about how many square miles that is. Probably, I don't know, 120 or so square miles, 105,000 square, in northwest Florida, right up about here. Jacksonville would be down here. There's a state line. Right about here is a river that goes through. You ever hear the song that Stephen Foster wrote? That's the Swanee River that he wrote about. When we did work in the plants there, we actually took water out of the Swanee, processed it, took it back and dumped it into the Swanee at pH neutral. And we got sued by the U.S. government because we were taking it out at pH 7 and they wanted it to go back in at pH 7. So we put up a little acid plant right there and treated the water. The plant makes phosphate products that are fertilizers, supplements for animal health, and home products. And a lot of the soaps you folks buy have phosphates in them, right? I thought I'd fill you in just a little bit on what phosphate means in animal husbandry. There are two essential minerals in the phosphate that we feed, calcium and phosphorus. Feed-grade calcium supplies the optimal amount that they need in the feed, and this is what the feed that the animals look like that they're getting. It supports bone development. And most important, it strengthens bones. Now, here's a picture of a broiler house. You're familiar with how most of the chickens in the country are raised? They grow up in a house that houses 20 to 50,000 chickens at a time. That gives 3/4 to 1 square foot of the bird for its lifetime. Now these animals have an extremely fast rate of growth with the meat going on their body. Unfortunately, their skeleton can't keep up, their bone growth can't keep up. So we feed them calcium and phosphorus in their feed so that their bone growth can stay up with how fast they're putting meat on. If we don't, those birds literally will sit there, collapse on their legs, and die because they can't get to the waterer or the feeder. So it's a really important element to be feeding. This is what a phosphate plant looks like in Central Florida. It is a huge operation. Our animal phosphate plant would be right here. So my successes, well, by the way, when I was hired by Oxy, it was put forward that we have issues with the animal phosphate plant. The issue was we didn't have enough demand. Had a very, very nice modern phosphate plant that had been overbuilt to make animal feed grade calcium phosphate. It was operating at 50% capacity. You folks know that you can't operate a plant at 50% capacity and have a cost-effective product. So I was tasked with increasing that plant load, and you know what's going to come after I do that. But so I was able to expand international markets. We did a couple of acquisitions, U.S., to expand our base. Imagine this, you're shipping bags of stuff that weighs 100 pounds, putting it in a container, putting it on a truck, shipping it to Savannah to be put on one of those huge container vessels to be taken to some port and go through the same stuff. Can you imagine how much that cost? If you're selling a ton of feed, which is 50 of those bags, and it's going to cost you $170 to do that, and you're selling it for $350, you're not going to make it up in volume. We created a system of being able to ship bulk from our plant to trade zones, to do the bagging in the trade zones, to deliver to our customers, and made that profitable. So pat on my back for that. Well, you knew what was coming. We got it all taken care of and got to sell it. Texas Gulf, everybody familiar with Texas Gulf? Texas Gulf makes sulfur and stuff out of Houston. They have the biggest phosphate mine in North Carolina. They came and they bought the animal health part of the mine. The Potash Corporation of Saskatchewan, which is the biggest fertilizer manufacturer in the world, came and bought all the rest of the phosphate operations. Here's a little sweet revenge for me. Just found out 2 weeks ago that Berkshire Hathaway has decided to acquire all of Occidental Chemical. They have offered $9.6 billion to acquire Occidental Chemical. So, what goes around, I guess, huh? I had divested myself for the third time of an employer. I tried a second career as a university professor. I lasted 4 years. Let's save that for another time. The primary responsibility of agribusiness, as I said, is to develop safe, economical, sustainable foodstuffs. So I thought I'd just show you some of the things that are going on in this market. First of all, we have to look at Marketing 101, and what it costs to produce something has no bearing on what you can sell it for. We're going to take a look at broilers, hogs, and beef cattle. How long do you think it takes to raise a chicken from when it's this big to when it's coming out of Chick-fil-A? 7 weeks. 7 weeks. Production cycle. How long to the cow? This is understated, it's closer to 28 months. And a hog takes 6 months from when it's weaned to when it's marketed. A 1,400-pound steer costs $2,800 to produce. That's if Lee is a rancher and he's taking that to market. He's going to pay him $2,800 for that. One steer. Costs, for a 240-pound hog, it costs $350. And for that 6-pound broiler that we talked about at 7 weeks of age, $5. So, again, marketing 101, what determines what they can sell it for is demand that you and I create. So I went and I did a little marketing research at Publix and Walmart and Kroger. Now this is what we're facing for Thanksgiving coming up, folks. You could go to Walmart and buy a turkey, 14-pound turkey, for 84 cents a pound. I guarantee you it costs the turkey rancher $1 to raise that turkey. It costs the rest of the processors another $1.50 to get it to where it was frozen. So that's $2.50. What do you think Walmart is paying for this that they're going to sell it for 84 cents? Well, again, it's marketing 101. They want you to come in and buy these. They're probably paying $3 for these. But they want you to come in and spend all the rest of your Thanksgiving goodies in their store. So it's commonly called the loss leader. At the other end, suppose after Thanksgiving dinner, you decide to have a steak on Sunday. Take a look at this. $27.94 a pound for ribeye steak. Now think about it. You can buy over 2 14-pound turkeys for what you can buy one steak for. We set these demands. A little more realistic, I went and I looked at what do chicken breasts cost if you show up at Walmart or Publix. $2.67 a pound. A chicken breast per pound has 122 grams of protein. The profit that Kroger makes is probably around 65 cents. Pork is selling for $5.46 a pound. Now, look at this. It's 122 grams of protein for you. Same protein, 122 grams of protein. This costs almost double what the chicken costs you. I didn't have the courage to put another $26 steak up there, but I did find $8.96 ground beef. Ground beef has 119 grams of protein. And Publix is making about $2.60 a pound on that. You can see what the issues are here. We are a consuming economy that can afford, when we want and our tastes dictate, to spend the $5 a pound or the $20 a pound, depending what we want. But there are countries in this world, and there's a lot of people at the lower extremes of our economy that have to live with the protein here at this cost. Pork, chicken, and beef all have similar protein contents. Some have unique benefits. Some athletes like to eat steak more than the others. But basically, if you take a multivitamin, you can get by and live with all these sources of protein. So here is what USDA says we can look forward to in our budgets next year. Retail prices, well, by the way, commercial feedlots, this is a commercial feedlot here, they normally have from 1 to 32,000 head on at any one time. That's how they raise these Prices are going to remain high because we're willing to pay for them. Kansas State University says their research shows that taste is the most important consideration we have when we choose protein. The beef industry is focused on making eating beef an experience. We talked about broilers who grow in 20 to 50,000 hens. It is the most affordable source of protein that we have in this country, of meat protein. USDA expects consumer demand to be resilient, and chicken will probably gain some market shares against pork and beef over the next year. Folks, in the last 7 years, the cost to the farmer to feed a cow or a hog has doubled. Our costs have almost doubled. Now, I want you to explain to me, and I'm not that good at math, how they can tell me that we have 3% inflation. And they don't include the cost of food when they do the inflation calculations. They exclude food and energy. I'm not going to get into politics, it just kind of bothers me a little bit. Pork is somewhere in between. We're getting towards the end, so there's a couple of things I want to just talk about on a personal note. In my life, I have made 3 covenants. The first one was on June 5th, 1963, when I raised my hand and said I would support and defend the Constitution. I went to Vietnam. I'm 90% disabled by the VA. I can still stand here, I have to hold on to something. On June 20th, 1964, I said I would love, honor, cherish, and obey. 43 years. On October 6, 2003, I had to admit that I had become addicted to alcohol. That I needed the help of a higher power, and I needed the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous to help me recover. This is not bragging on my part. That was 22 years ago, this last October, that I celebrated my 22nd anniversary in AA. Not counting, that was 8,326 days without a martini. I'm not doing that to brag. The 12th step of AA says that those of us who have achieved sobriety have an obligation to tell our story to the alcoholic who still suffers. And I share that with you tonight, because if you know of someone who thinks they would benefit from my story, give me a call. It's confidential, and I am committed to sharing my story with them. So I hope you don't mind me entering that. That's it, folks.
Any questions for Don?
I have one question.
Okay.
Don, do you have any ideas?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll take questions. Some folks have to go.
The proportion of consumption in America of chicken, pork, and beef? How much of our calories or how much of our protein we get from each of those 3?
Well, you get the same amount of protein from a pound of each one. Now, you need about